case if I get more thirsty. Is it 6, yeah? It must be. What does your phone say? 6. Yeah. I'll call the meeting to order. We'll state the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Okay, I would take approval of the agenda. I was thinking about moving the ambulance service proposal up to underneath the Columbus Avenue.
I'll make a motion that we approve the agenda with your changes to move the ambulance up to, what number would it be?
That'd be, I suppose, the new
Or A.
number 6 or 5A or 5B, something like that.
Oh, 5B.
I'll second the motion.
There's been a motion and a second. Any other discussion? Hearing none, all in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, motion carries. All right, the consent agenda. Does anybody have any questions on that? Otherwise, I would take a motion to approve.
So moved.
Been a motion, is there a second?
I'll second.
There's been a motion by Rick, seconded by Maggie, to approve the consent agenda. Any discussion? Hearing none, all in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, motion carries. You're up.
All right. Well, thanks for having me. I am Brad Faltusek with Abdo. We did change our name last year from Abdo Eichenmeyer, so now we are Abdo. You should have the presentation with you. I was going to have one other person come here today, so if someone pops in, she might come up or not. But, so what I'll go through, you should have in your packet the financial statements, the presentation. I'll go through the presentation with you, and then if you have any specific questions, if we need to open up the financial statements, we certainly can do that. But primarily, just go through the presentation. So with the presentation, we'll go through auditor's opinion and responsibility in performing the audit, the general fund results, other governmental fund results, enterprise funds, and then key performance indicators. So that's where we have ratios at the end of the presentation that compares your city to other cities across the state, as well as other cities within the county. So as far as our results, our auditor's opinion, we are issuing an unmodified opinion on your financial statements, so that's the opinion you're looking for when you have a financial statement prepared. So we're saying that when we came in, the trial balance and the numbers were adjusted accordingly, and they're also presented in the financial statements in accordance with generally accepted accounting principles. The state auditor requires us to go through a series of checklists to make sure you're following different state statutes as part of our financial statement audit that they require us to go through. We are not reporting any non-compliance with any of those statutes. So those are things like making sure you're investing in appropriate investments, cash deposits, those types of things. If you're issuing bonds, make sure you're following specific statutes related to bonding, or if you're awarding bidding or contracts, that you're following specific statutes surrounding those as well. So you didn't find any non-compliance there. You're going to be following everything we tested. You are, we did do an additional audit this year. This was what's called the single audit. And that's if you spend more than $750,000 of federal funds in any calendar year or fiscal year, you're required to have a compliance audit done on those programs. So you spent almost $5 million on the Highway 19 project this past year, so certainly well above that $750,000. So we did compliance testing over that federal program, and are not reporting any non-compliance there either. So in all three of the reports had good results. We do have one finding, the limited segregation of duties. It's a finding you've had in here for a number of years, and very common for many cities to have this finding. Just want to make you aware that ultimately the finances are your responsibility. So if you're looking at finances on a monthly basis, if you see something odd or you don't understand, make sure you're asking questions about it and getting a good answers. We didn't notice anything and see anything in part of our process that we would question or anything like that. So, but ultimately it's your responsibility to take a look at things on a monthly basis and make sure you're looking at that. So we're going to be just kind of brainstorming some ideas this coming year to see if maybe we can get rid of some of these findings, or this finding. So nothing to be alarmed at here. Then we're going to get into, actually Abby is going to get into the results of the financial, the different fund results, and then I'm going to pick back up and go through some of those ratios at the end. So Abby.
Thank you. Got stuck behind a particularly slow semi. I apologize. Do you know? Touch anything? No. Okay. Yeah, so like Brad said, I'll be going over some of the actual fund results, starting with the general fund. So this graph here shows your fund balance policy, which is to maintain 50% of next year's budgeted expenditures and keeping that in the general fund unassigned fund balance. So you can kind of see the overlapping orange and black lines are going to be your fund balance policy of 50%, and you guys have maintained that unassigned fund balance of 50% consistently over the years. Pretty much anything that is above that 50% gets kind of allocated to committed or assigned funds for particular uses, kind of earmarked and set aside for things like equipment and vehicles. And also note that your budget, you can see from 2017 to 2022 has been fairly consistent, increasing slightly over the years. This next slide compares your general fund budget to your actual amounts. So that top line, you were about $130,000 above your budgeted revenues. That was mainly due to more building permits received than budgeted. Those are just budgeted conservatively due to the uncertainty of the building market, so you did receive around $70,000 more than expected. And then there were just some additional smaller intergovernmental and insurance proceeds that weren't budgeted for that you did receive. The expenditures were actually under budget by around $44,000. Nothing really jumped out kind of across the board. Expenditures were just a bit lower than budgeted for. And then the other financing sources and uses, your budgeted transfers in and out. That transfer out is predominantly that golf transfer, as you're aware of, that gets transferred to the golf fund operations every year. So all in all, you did have an increase in fund balance of $55,000 versus the decrease of $118,000 that was budgeted. This graph breaks out your general fund revenues by type. So they are pretty consistent year to year. Taxes with slight increases each year. The one thing I'll note is that intergovernmental in 2020 there were quite a few more COVID grants received, and those ARPA funds are received in a different fund and weren't all spent this year, so those are not reflected in that 2021 black bar for intergovernmental revenues. Your general fund expenditures by type. I got mixed up. So those over for general government and public safety, again, just kind of an inflation increase for over the last 3 years. And your public works expenses have actually gone down over the last 3 years. There was a jump in 2021 for culture and rec, mostly due to the South Side Park project costs. And then the other category, 2020 had quite a few larger transactions for technology upgrades, so those weren't as high in 2021. Is there any questions on the general fund before we go on to your other types? No. All right, so your special revenue funds here, those are accounting for dollars that come in that are either restricted or committed for specific purposes. The one thing to note here, you can see there was a decrease in fund balance in your 2016 Small Cities Project Fund. The loans back in 2016 were set up where if certain requirements were met, 50% would be forgiven. So in 2021, some of those requirements were met, so we wrote, or 50% was forgiven on some of those loans, so that's why the fund balance did decrease in that fund. Your capital project funds, which are set aside for different projects or equipment purchases. The Trunk Highway 19 project did increase, but the project is still in a deficit. Staff does expect additional grant revenues to come in to reduce that deficit. And as of recently, it did, fund balance did increase. It's sitting around a $200,000 deficit versus the $430 shown here. And then the CIP 2022 fund is also in a deficit, but that will be bonded for with the 2022 bonds. This slide and the next slide lays out your governmental debt. So your enterprise debt will be kind of shown in the following slide, so this will just focus on your governmental. So here are all your outstanding bonds in the governmental side, and then this slide kind of shows your debt payments over the next 10 years. So nothing major. Some debt will drop off in 2026 and 2029, but this is not reflective of those 2022 bonds that will be issued. So this will change. Yep.
Abby, does this debt payment just reflect the general levy requirement debt payments or the assessed payments also? Or all payment, total payments?
Total payments.
Okay.
Yep.
Anything that isn't supported with water, sewer, or revenue. So it'd be all the street, anything related to bonds related to streets and non-water sewer projects.
Whether it's assessed against the homeowner or not?
Correct.
Okay.
Now we'll get into some of those enterprise funds. So the way enterprise funds operate, service charges really should cover your operating expenses plus any debt payments. So the top chart for all these enterprise slides will be comparing your operating receipts in the orange bar to your operating expenses and debt payments, which are the yellow and black bars. So for the water fund, you've consistently received enough operating receipts to cover your expenses and debt payments, except in 2021. So you'll kind of see this throughout. There was some bonds refunded at the end of 2020, so they weren't actually paid off until 2021, which is why the debt black bar increased so much, but we do anticipate that that will drop down again going forward. And then the bottom chart compares cash in the fund in the orange bar to a minimum target cash balance, the black line. So that minimum target cash balance would be 50% of your operating expenses plus next year's debt payment. The cash, so basically the cash below the black line is what we would say to cover half of the next year plus your debt payment. That's what you would need in cash. And anything above that is kind of more for your capital reserves and any projects that you want to fund without bonding for. So your cash did increase in the water fund. There were bonds issued around $2 million, and only around $900,000 was spent of that. So that's why there's some extra cash sitting in the water fund. The sewer fund, again, the black bar did increase slightly due to those refunding bonds, but the sewer fund has been able to maintain operating receipts above your disbursements and debt payments consistently over the years. And your cash is well above that minimum target balance, so anything above that is kind of, can be earmarked for projects and equipment replacement. Electric fund has consistently, again, covered your operating disbursements and debt payments, and there was an increase of around $200,000 in charges for services, and expenses actually dropped, which is why you can see that the orange bar on the bottom graph did increase your actual cash. So the golf fund receipts weren't high enough, quite high enough to cover your operating expenses and debt payments. But I will say the debt payments increased due to those refundings again, so you would have probably broken about even like you did in prior year, because there was around 133,000 additional sales last year due to COVID and good weather. And cash in the bottom graph has been consistently below the minimum target, but it has crept up from 2019. It was around 60,000 and now it's sitting around 200,000. So it's on the right trend. And again, the general fund does help subsidize operations with that yearly transfer. The ambulance fund, I'll just note right away, the top graph, it looks the same, but the revenues are quite a bit lower in scale to your other enterprise funds, around 20,000 in revenues, but that has been plenty to cover your around $12,000 in expenditures, and has consistently been well above the minimum target cash balance, sitting around $170,000 in cash. Your stormwater utility fund, receipts do normally cover expenses, but the timing of that refunding bond really increased the debt payments in the storm fund. So we anticipate that to drop in the future, and operating receipts should cover disbursements and debt payments going forward. And then cash did increase, similar to the water fund. Bonds were issued, but not all of those were spent yet, so there's more cash sitting in the fund to be spent. And then here's a snapshot just on all of your cash and investment balances by fund type. So the majority of your cash is sitting in those enterprise funds, and it did increase this year, but like I mentioned, it's mostly to do with some unspent bond proceeds still sitting in those enterprise funds. Brad will take it over unless you have questions on enterprise funds or general fund.
I just have one quick one, because you explained the stormwater and the water fund with those bonds not being totally used, and that's why it was up. But that sewer fund was almost up another, I think it was slide 14, was up almost another $1 million, but I didn't hear what that would have been attributed to.
Oh,
I'm just kind of
sorry.
curious.
The bonds that were refunded, a portion of those were sewer as well.
Oh, they were?
Yep.
Okay.
So kind of across the board, Gulf, sewer, water, and storm all had some additional debt payments. Just the timing of those refunding that should drop down again next year.
Okay, thank you.
I had a question also on that. I think I might have mentioned this last year too, when we have such a high number above our minimum target number, should we be earmarking some of those funds so it doesn't look like we're so far over what our target balances should be on some of these funds? And then as an example, utilities, I think some of the money is earmarked for the new building, I think. So if you consider that, we're not that far, we're not way over the target. And some of those kinds of activities, when they come up, because looking at this utility, when you say, well, geez, we got a lot of money, but really it's earmarked for something. Right,
yeah. The minimum target cash balance, I mean, it's really just saying half a year of operating expenses next year plus a debt payment, or your debt payments. So that doesn't take into account all of those things earmarked for the minimum target cash balance. But I don't know if you can explain it a little.
A little. So anything under that, it's not really a target. It's a line that we wouldn't want you to go below for operations. Anything above its capital. For government, related to government financial statements, there's really no way to show on the financial statements an earmark in an enterprise fund. Like in the governmental funds, we talked about committing and assigning, those types of things. There's not that same terminology when we look at enterprise funds. So yes, you have plans for it, but there's no way for us to really show that on a financial statement because of the type of fund it is.
Okay, thank you.
Yep.
All right, then I'll hand it over to Brad.
Okay, so what Abby talked about, I think you overall had a good year in just about all your funds. I think you had really increases in big project fund and in your golf fund. So those are the kind of funds you are probably looking at. So getting into some of the comparisons with your city with other cities across, again, the class 4 cities in here. So the orange bars in each one of these are other cities across the state of Minnesota. Populations from 0 to 10,000 that report on a modified accrual basis, the same accrual basis that you guys are reporting on. So there are some cities out there under 2,500 population that report on basically a cash basis. So it doesn't include any of those. So there's some variables in why you will and will not report on a cash basis. But, so these are all the cities under 10,000 population. So taking a look at tax rates, and I guess the bars in yellow are the other cities in the county. The bar and the black line is the city of New Prague. So looking at tax rates, you're right in line with others in the county and slightly below others across the state, just looking at tax rates in total. Taxes per capita, you're slightly below both of those peer group data as far as what people are paying per capita. Taking out your debt, so long-term debt per capita, this is all the debt within the city. So you can see you're quite a bit higher than your peers in this category. You do have a wastewater treatment plant that you have about $24 million of outstanding debt on. That's included in here. Just taking that divided by the populations, that alone is about a $3,000 per resident amount. So if you were to take that bond off, bring it down, you'd be right in line with everybody else. So that's really causing that big jump there, that big spike, or that amount above the peers. Debt service expense as a percent of current expense. So this is looking at just of your total expenditures, how much of your expenditures is debt related. You can see it jumped up in 2021. That related to, again, we've talked about a number of times the refunding bond that was paid off in 2021. So it had a slight jump there, but going into 2022, we'll probably see that go back down to where it was in 19 and 20. Expenditures, so this is just looking at your governmental type expenditures. Your operating expenditures are on the right, the current expenditures. You can see these are just primarily your day-to-day type things, not including your capital or debt service requirements. So right in line with others within the county, and actually slightly below others across the state of similar sized cities. Then the bar or the chart on the right that's looking at your capital. Again, 2021, this is going to fluctuate from year to year for the most part. 2021, again, you spent $5 million on the road project. So definitely had quite a big spike in 2021. Then with our enterprise funds, water and sewer, we've talked briefly about this already too. Are you generating enough revenue from operations to support your debt service requirements? That's really what this chart is showing. So you can see on the bottom part where it actually shows the percentages, you've been over 100%. What we look for is we want to make sure you're staying above that 100% mark. So you are definitely generating enough to support your debt and as well as some of your capital. As you can see that with your cash balances. Same thing with the sewer fund there. You're at 127 this year. Hovered around that 120% in the sewer fund year after year. I believe that's it. Any questions on any of those comparisons? Or want to go back to any of them?
I just the debt service expenditures, percentage of expenditures, is there any difference between a city that assesses more of their street projects versus takes it out of the general fund between cities?
If you have higher assessments, if you have higher assessments and you have, let's say you have higher bonds, it depends if your tax rate may not be affected as much by the higher debt service requirements. If you decide you're not going to assess and just tax everybody for whatever project, then you're likely going to see higher tax rates.
Right, so I understand you said they will go down, but even in the previous 2 years were higher than the two comparable indexes, the Class 4 in Scott County.
Are you looking at the debt as a percent of
Expenditures, yeah.
Spend of current? Well, it went up in 21 because of the refunding, so you definitely spent a lot more paying off that old bond. But you're right, in 2019 and from 19 to 20, it rose slightly. It's just probably additional bonds that are issued.
I'm trying to understand if we have, if our assessment policy is consistent with other cities, and do we see that when we compare these kind of numbers, or are we comparing apples to apples here, or do some cities in Scott County might assess differently, so we're assessing more or less?
There certainly is other variables, yeah.
But this isn't just assessments, this is everything that we put out for debt service. So if we do equipment funds and everything else, that's part of this.
Yeah, yeah.
Right.
Yeah, there's a lot of variables in every one of these. So, but if you look at the ones across the state of Minnesota, putting them all together, it should be a pretty good average. But you're right, there's specific instances for your city, and sometimes you'll see cities jump out of that because there's all kinds of unique variables for every city. So it's not always apples to apples because there is so many variables out there.
But it's still a third higher than it was the year before. I mean, is that a
2020
concern?
is?
Yeah, 2021,
2021, because you paid off that debt.
no, but is that isn't concerning though, just because of
No.
that one-time debt?
No.
You feel confident that
Yeah.
next year okay.
Because you issued bonds in 2020 to make that payment. It wasn't that you used cash reserves to pay it, or it wasn't that all of a sudden your debt service requirements are gonna go up now.
It's a totally off the wall question, or not off the wall, but I don't want to get too obscure here, but utility, we talked about mark to market. And because we do modified adjustment, do we have to worry about mark to market on our investments? Or do we have a kind of a health to maturity thing that we do? Or do we have to worry about that if I didn't study the audit, so I didn't look to see how it's looked at there.
Yeah.
But maybe you can.
Yeah, there's a number of cases this year that we've seen that adjusting your investments to market, people are showing negative interest
Right.
earnings, and that's no different.
But do we need to reflect that in our financial statement?
It is reflected in your financials. It is. It shows us negative interest earnings in your financials. Are you asking if we should have a note disclosure talking about the risk of the market? Is that what you're asking, or?
No, I'm just trying to understand how we account for it if we treat it, I come from a different world where we had healthy investments and we didn't have to mark to market.
Mhm.
And I was wondering if there's opportunity to do that in our statements, or do we have to mark to market?
You have to.
You have to,
Yep, it's
okay.
required.
Okay, so that does make a difference. It does make it seem, if you're holding it to a maturity, that you have much more loss than you will.
Yep.
Okay, thank you.
Could it be that part of our debt service, how we show a lot of debt, is just indicative of how New Prague has been very aggressive in our CIP projects? I mean, we're sitting in a good position in regards to that and have probably 3/4 of the town completely reconstructed.
Sure.
Versus a lot of communities are gonna face those going up here.
Absolutely.
I mean, you kind of look at that and you wonder why, but New Prague has really been aggressive on, you guys have pulled the line and we've done CIP projects almost every year, good or, through the good and bad, so that's gonna pay off eventually.
Any other questions? Anything else from the auditors?
That should do it.
Okay. All right, thank you.
Thank you. I just want to thank staff too. They did a great job getting prepared for the audit and make it a smooth process again, so.
Good to hear. Okay, with that, I would take a motion to approve the 2021 annual financial audit report as presented.
So moved.
There's been a motion, is there a second?
Second.
There's motion and a second. Any other discussion? Hearing none, all in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, motion carries. Okay, next up on the agenda is the water service and sanitary sewer service special assessment rate recommendations.
Good evening, Mayor, members of the City Council. I'm assuming you can see and hear me?
Just hear you. Now we see you.
Now you see me. Okay. Well, yes, one of the items that we wanted to bring back before you, if you recall, during the feasibility study, we had presented the estimated assessment rates for the water and sewer services. And knowing kind of how the market was, we wanted to evaluate that after the bids. We'll admit that during that feasibility study, we were basing a lot of those numbers on the costs that we had on the Main Street project, and that was certainly a more complex project. And we did kind of think that the rates might be a little bit lower. But of course, since last fall, we started to see supply chain issues, shortage of materials, inflation costs going up, et cetera. But when the bids went out and we evaluated the cost, the actual cost based on the bids, the assessment rates were coming in pretty close to what we had estimated in the feasibility study. I think you do have before you the table that lists the assessment rates.
Yes, you do.
Okay, and just to point out, we listed again for informational purposes in the first column, the assessment rates that were on the Main Street 2020 project. And then the rates that we estimated or assumed would be applicable for the 2022 project, what was presented in the feasibility study. And then the yellow column there, we did present the recommendation, the rates that as we're recommending should be used for the assessment hearing this fall. And you can see in the last column the difference from the feasibility study to where we're at today. And then at the very bottom, what the total amount of assessment would be for anybody that had all items assessed. So we agreed to bring that back before you, and I guess just get the nod of approval from the council, and this would be presented. We'd actually present this in an informational. We have an informational packet that'll go out to all the property owners regarding the upcoming construction, and we'd also include an update on the assessment rates, and again, just that they'd be the ones that be applied.
Uh-oh.
I guess that's it. Any questions regarding what we had to provided in
We lost you probably the last 40 seconds, so.
Oh, okay. I was just reiterating we would be sending out an informational packet to all the property owners regarding construction. And we would also present these assessment rates, update them where those were proposed to be for this fall. So at this point, I guess we're looking for any questions you have, and then otherwise, I guess a nod of approval from the council to go ahead and broadcast these rates to the property owners on the project.
So like a residential lot is gonna be assessed 9,100 plus sewer plus water? Is that how that
Yes,
works? Okay,
If they have all of them, yeah. And I guess I should point out that the street assessments were not proposed to change, and those are not proposed, as noted here, those are not changing at all. Yeah, the water rates are the ones that are listed below. And so if there is somebody that would have sewer, water, and a street assessment, they'd be looking at a $15,030 assessment, which is about $220 over what we had estimated in the feasibility study.
gotcha. Okay, I see it now, okay. Any questions?
I make a motion to approve the attached assessment rates as they are presented.
I'll second.
Okay, there's been a motion by Bruce, seconded by Maggie to approve the assessment rates. Any other discussion? Hearing none, all in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, motion carries.
Thank you.
You're welcome, thank you. Are you on again?
I'll be on a little later, yeah, for the state aid item.
Okay, all right.
So get in.
So I don't know if everybody heard it, but we moved the ambulance service proposal up to this item now. The thing is that, the council has gone through the proposals and is gonna make a decision tonight. I know that we might have people here in the audience that wanna speak to it. And, I'm just gonna set a couple guidelines. You need to come up to the podium, state your name and address for the record. And you'll have no more than 5 minutes, correct. You'll have no more than 5 minutes and you can only speak once. And if you're gonna follow another speaker, just don't repeat what that previous speaker said. You know, we've heard it, so we don't wanna just rehash and extend it. So with that, does anybody wanna speak to the, ambulance proposal in? from the audience? Yes, sir. Come on up. State your name and address, please.
My name is Vernon Oraskovich. I live at 713 First Street Southeast, New Prague. Unfortunately, I'm Ron McBroom's neighbor.
Yeah.
So I thank you for the opportunity to express a few opinions to this evening. I think it's great that you take that information and use that for making your decisions. I just have a few key points that I'd like to point out. When you went through the same process, was it 3 years ago, 2 years ago?
Something like that.
Where does time go? Well, I did a little research on this, and one of the things that really stuck out in my mind is that North, when they have a call and have a patient, they ask that patient where they would like to be taken, what hospital they'd like to go to. I know this for a fact, that they, whether it be Shakopee or New Prague, wherever it may be, they ask what hospital they'd like to go to, unless it's a situation where they have no choice because of the person's condition. I also tried to find my information tonight or this afternoon, what I had found also that Mayo has it by zones. And by zone, they have very little choice. They can go to another hospital, but the first choice is to another Mayo facility, a Mayo hospital. This, again, just makes Mayo another monopoly, taking the ambulance service and the hospital thing. I guess if it ended up where it was Mayo, I'd just see the helicopter going over my house more frequently, because it seems like a lot of people that come, particularly to New Prague, end up going to Rochester or Mankato. Second point I'd like to make is that relates to North and Mayo. The second one is a real concern that I have, and that's about the current employees of North. I do know some of these employees, and I know how hard they work and how dedicated they are to their ambulance service. They're members of this community. They own a home here, have purchased a home here, do their business here, and if we change, what happens? Are they out of a job altogether? Must they relocate? And I would really hate to see that happen, because I think we need to put a people perspective into this thing as well. People are important in this city, and what you people do here is very important. What they do is extremely important as well. When they get that call, they're representing the city of New Prague as well. The final point I'd like to make is, I get up to the fitness center, and sometimes people say I exercise my jaws more than anything else. But you talk to a lot of people, and the people are aware of what is happening here and the decisions that are made. I have not heard anybody give me one negative, not a single negative feedback about North Ambulance Service. They are very pleased with what we have, and I think the city should be proud of the fact that they have North here and that they take on such a responsibility in doing what they are. So all I'm saying is, it doesn't appear to me that it's broken, that the system is broken. And why do we want to try and fix something that's not broken? So with that, that's my comments.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you very much. Okay, anybody else? Otherwise, the council will discuss.
Would make a motion.
Oh, I'm sorry.
Ronnie coming up?
Thanks, I didn't see that.
Mayor Jerick, City Council. Excuse me, I'm Ron McBroom. I reside at 711 First Street Southeast. Been a New Prague citizen since 1971. And I'm not against Mayo, just that I don't have anything good to say about them. I'll say that again, I don't have anything good to say about them. What do I base this on? 3 years ago, I spoke about the St. Peter incident, about where they went into St. Peter and bought the clinic, but they couldn't buy the hospital. The city owned the hospital. And they went and purposely lied to patients to keep them in their network. The city of St. Peter ended up suing them. Story ended up in front of the St. Peter Herald. Give you another example. 2 weeks ago, you had a Mayo presentation here. One of you council members asked Mayo about the response time. They used Fairmont as an example because it was comparable to New Prague for response time. They could have added on, though, that Fairmont tried to kick them out of their community. I don't know what the issues were. That ended up on the front page of the Minneapolis Tribune. They literally tried to kick them out. They couldn't get rid of them because they'd signed a contract, of course. They come into New Prague here by our hospital. You know what one of the first things they did? We had a gal here, spent 20 years as head of housekeeping. She didn't have an associate's degree. So Mayo told her she had to leave unless she got an associate's degree. Well, she fooled them. She was going to go to night school. Well, they called her bluff, so then they fired her. How do I know this? She called me for health insurance, and she's in her middle 50s without a job. Their treatment of employees is not good. Their history is not good. Today, very few people are left at our hospital than when they came in here because of how they've been treated. Morale is very low. How does this compare to the ambulance service? Well, the ambulance service is connected, of course, if you give them the contract. And the ambulance service, it isn't that Mayo wants an ambulance service. The ambulance service is peanuts. But that patient they bring in may be there for 2 weeks. That's $200,000 or at least $150,000 in revenue. And there's high turnover among I found out there's high turnover among their Mayo's emergency, their paramedics. Why is that? That I don't know, but I suspect they're probably told, bring those people to Mayo, and if they don't, they probably don't have their job. They probably don't have their job too long. You know, getting back to that deal with the gal, head of housekeeping. Haven't you always been told in life, you work hard, you do your job right, and you'll be rewarded? Well, she sure got rewarded. And there's many other stories like that around about Mayo. You can be at a public gathering, and if Mayo comes up, there's usually a negative story in there. Mayo is very aggressive, and they are very concerned with one thing, revenue. They love money, and they're very aggressive in getting it from the examples that I just gave you.
Okay.
And again, I think my time's about up. And again, I'll state again, I haven't changed. When it comes to Mayo, I still prefer mustard.
Thanks, Ron.
This is only concerning the ambulance service at Mayo, first of all.
Correct.
And I would like to make the motion to renew the contract for North and extend it to a 5-year period before we renew it again.
Okay, motion's been made. Is there a second?
I'll second, just because I know that there will be some discussion as well.
Okay, discussion.
Well, I've been contacted from a couple of constituents. I've been contacted by email. We received a letter as well from a paramedic. And I will have to say that I haven't had any negative feedback about the Mayo Clinic Health System, but I also haven't had any comment at all. And I suspect that it's because we don't currently have them as our ambulance service, so people would not necessarily have an opinion unless they had experience from other cities. But with that said, I have to support the constituents. I have to take their decision into consideration, and therefore, because of them, I would like to extend the contract to North Memorial and for the 5-year period. They have been in our community for 12 years. I've heard nothing but good. I have not heard anything negative. So based on that, and again, to Ron's comment, if it's not broken, there's no reason to fix it or change the service. And these people are members of our community.
Okay. Anything else?
I thought we were, in our previous meetings, we were looking at a 3-year term. And this was the first I'd heard about a 5-year, but
Yeah, I
I'm
hope
not
that we were
necessarily
gonna
opposed to
discuss
this.
it before a motion would be made, but, it is
Well, the
what
only
it is.
reason I seconded is just to open to discussion as well, but I think that's what Josh had put in his memo, was a 5-year contract.
I think so. I'm sorry, I interrupted you.
No, I was done. The 5-year came out of the blue. I thought we had
Well,
been
I'm sorry,
talking about it.
because I did bring it up last time we did this, and, here we are, just that fast here again, so it don't make sense, there's nothing broken with North.
Totally, I don't disagree with you.
And they, for us to keep going over it every 2, 3 years, make it 5 years and call it even. I don't see any new technologies coming, that are going to spruce in either, ambulance service up. I just don't think that we should be firing North, for nothing. They've done nothing. I've got nothing but good comments. I see them guys like once a week at least. And, they're always right on it. So that was the reason for that, and the reason to change it to 5 was, last year we had talked about, or last time we talked about it, and like I say, it just flew up that fast again, so,
That was a 2-year, but yeah.
yeah.
it was.
I'm done.
Okay, well, I just want to make some comments. As everyone knows, the city holds the license to operate the 911 services in this PSA area, the primary service area. We're responsible for providing the service area and through a contract relationship that we currently have with North Memorial, so this is news that you know. So part of the process that we went through and that we are going through is is oversight and monitoring of that contract, and then a review of the service. As far as the oversight and monitoring the responsibility, in my opinion, what I've seen is the North Memorial has a very good track record of providing the requested services that we asked of them over the last 11 years. It's evidenced by the run times that they've shown us and they've delivered. The survey results that they gave, my own personal experience, and some community input. I will have to say, as far as looking at this issue and reviewing it, it's really hard to get good feedback as far as complaints or even criticisms or critiques. There have been people that have mentioned to me various concerns on both sides, but when it comes to trying to acknowledge them or kind of stand behind them, people are reluctant to do it. And in this area, it seems to be even more complicated because some of this information as far as outcomes and things is not really public information. Complaints that are filed with the state, as I understand it, we don't have access to, so we don't have information if there were any complaints. We asked administrator to ask, and I think there was no complaints.
No public complaints, I think it was a specific.
And no complaints to the city of New Prague.
Correct.
So I take that for what it is. I think that as far as council, just thinking about this in the future, it would be nice if we could see survey results of some sort. I take the survey results that North told us at it for what they said it was, but it'd be nice to know kind of what the questions were. What did you score low on? What did you score high on? It would be nice to know that for our own quality control. Quality control within the EMS area, I understand, is confidential too, so those are the things that may develop into the future. I understand there was a legislative audit for EMS services that was released in February. That was one of the criticisms for the state board that governs it. So maybe some of those kind of things can be looked at in the future if it gets to more looking at outcomes, so you can have a better judge of services. Our own annual meetings that we have, we don't really have minutes of them, and it's, some of the information from the last one we just received a week ago. So some of those kind of things we can talk about, maybe tidying up into the future. Secondly, as far as this process, we look at a review of the service and the contract. This would give you opportunities for other providers might provide benefits to the community members of our PSA. And that's why and that's why the second part of this process is I see it. But just to reiterate, there's been no issue with the quality of service. Actually, I think everyone agrees that the service provided by North Memorial has been very good over the last 11 years. But as I say, the second part of this is really the comparison and the request that the city council asked for, request for proposals from Mayo and from North Memorial. When trying to look at these two, in my mind anyway, there's no set standards that I found that can be used to make judgments in comparison. But the things that I looked at that were performance, cost of a service or value, how it's integrated into the community support, community involvement, and service levels were some of the things I looked at. Performance, I think I've heard from a number of people, and North Memorial themselves said that both are high-quality providers, and I totally agree with that. North Memorial and Mayo both have a history of providing quality service. Run times in North Memorial, I think, were understood to be very good. I don't see any reason why Mayo would be much worse than that if they were in it. They talked about complaints. There were no complaints. I think both services can provide the services that we need well. As far as cost of service, I think that answers, we really don't have access to that kind of information, so I don't know if there's a comparison that can be made that way. Both are actively community involved relative to their size. Obviously, Mayo is a much larger organization, has been involved in a different way. Community integration, and kind of when I think about this, is how well is it fitted in with our fire department, police, and city, and some of those things. I think North Memorial has established very good working relationships with our fire. I haven't heard from the police, but I assume that they have with the police as well. And I've heard with the city also. They've been doing it for 11 years, and it appears to be very well integrated. A new service would have to require some time to build those kind of relationships, so that would be an issue that I would consider. As far as levels of service, I think this is an issue that there is, as far as on the face of it, and the documents anyway, is showing a difference. Mayo's, as far as I understand, is committing to a higher number of hours of ALS service. And North Memorial certainly has their continuity of service with staffing with their relationship preferable than the other markets. So I think that's a material change that I do struggle with a little bit, is that there is a difference there. I think it's a very good point as far as the staffing. North Memorial is better situated to maintain the continuity of service. They obviously have the staffing in place. A change may cause more disruptions or different issues and create some risk involved in any kind of a change. So I think that would be an issue I would consider. There's talk about the community medicine, and I think this is something the city doesn't control. I certainly support it from what I understand of it. There's certainly some advantages. I feel it being integrated with a hospital. But to me, we're not really deciding about choosing a community paramedicine service. So that's kind of out of it. My summary really is that I think North Memorial has a good track record. The continuity of service would be less disruptive. It has good community integration with the city. The reasons to change would really be the commitment for a higher number of hours of ALS service. So in my mind, it would be good to negotiate or talk to North Memorial about renewing the contract and see if there's anything we could do with their commitment to ALS service, and what does it look like into the future? Can they commit to more hours of that service in that? So I think the other issue I mentioned, the legislative audit, there is discussion from the legislature that there may be some changes. This report. Just because they did a report doesn't mean there's a law that's going to happen, but there certainly is more communication with trying to measure outcomes in this area. So doing a 5-year commitment seems to be longer than that's needed. in it, and then also to talk about the market rent. If we're gonna subsidize, then I think there's some issues we should talk about the contract language, and we should really, my recommendation would have been to, start the discussions with North Memorial about renewing the contract, considering some of these issues, and see if we can negotiate some of these terms.
Thank you, Bruce.
Thanks, Bruce. I guess, you know, I heard from the constituents, but I also heard from first responders, police officers and firemen, firefighters, I should say. And those are the people that they stated to me that they had a good working relationship with North and that they wanted to keep that relationship. I guess I would take an amendment to the motion if you want to include what you just stated of negotiation. Well,
So I understand where you're coming from, is that to make a motion to approve the North proposal for ambulance service in the city of New Prague, subject to
negotiating.
full negotiation of the contract and resolution to those negotiations.
Correct. Would you be?
I accept.
Okay.
So do we, because time is of the essence here too with the contract running out, but
Right.
do we do a 1 year with the option of expanding that to a 3 or 5 year after the negotiation period? Or how would we word that?
The contract currently does not run out till the end of March 2023.
Yeah.
Oh, I'm sorry. I thought it was just
No,
coming up sooner.
but we promised that we would
Right.
do it more sooner than later.
I think the timing of the essence, the issue with that is if we don't have the contract negotiated in the next month or two, then we run into the same problem we had last time where
Right.
there wasn't an opportunity to consider it even because of the timing of the
Well,
contract maturing.
We have a contract in place where we can use as the base. So it's not as if we're looking at every provision in the contract and renegotiating terms. So there's a couple of key things perhaps we would like to spot, you know, on and you know, to your point, the lease of the building, which I don't know, is that a separate lease agreement?
It was a separate lease agreement previously.
Okay, so maybe it's not even part of
Yeah.
the contract, I don't know.
Yeah, the points that stuck out to me is really the hours of ALS service, which seem to be, and I was told was, more than North Memorial's existing.
Right, yeah.
And as I said before, I'm a little confused because I understand the value of having a very flexible scheduling period where you don't want to commit to the ALS service a certain number because you want to have the flexibility based on volumes and what the history is and some of those types of things. But we're comparing against a situation where someone is committing. So then, is there latitude, is there ability to improve what I would understand to mean improvement of service to our PSA area if there were more ALS hours out there? My understanding, my feeling, is that North Memorial is trying to work in that direction anyway. So to try to get more commitment is, through our negotiations of the contract is what I would like to explore. But in any event, whatever is negotiated should come back to us anyway.
yes.
With an
Oh,
approved
yeah.
contract. So
Absolutely.
I'm not sure we can negotiate a contract right here.
No, and I don't want.
No, I don't think we're gonna.
So how do you word that though, Bruce? I mean, I'm with you, I understand that, but I just, if we do a 3-year deal now, that doesn't really give us an opportunity to negotiate
Well, yeah,
over and above the March of 2023, but.
Ken,
So if I could interject, so we do actually have City Administrator Tetzloff on the call. He is willing to address the time frame of the contract. He did note specifically in his memo a 5-year agreement for the service as what he recommended. Obviously, his recommendation did include Mayo as well. But there he is. Jim, I don't know if you can pop up the screen that's got him on there. We'll get there. We'll get there, Josh. There we
hi,
go.
Hello. So, The reason why it says 5 years is actually our current contract had a typo in it. Speaking with Scott Riggs, I kind of got his opinion. Our current contract actually says 5 years, but then it dates the last day as only 3 years after the contract was signed. And so it looked like previously we'd had 5-year contracts or about there. And so that's why initially my thought was we would just go back to the 5-year contract. I don't think there's any opposition to going to shorter. It was just trying to move back to kind of where we were and what the intentions of the last contract would be outside of that typo.
Yep. And then Bruce, to your point about the ALS service, when we get to that point, it would be interesting to know what the average use of that ALS service is in the New Prague area. But then also in negotiations, we might be able to set some performance standards or some goals to be met within that contract period, if that's an important point.
I'm by no means any kind of expert in this area, but I've learned much more than I thought I would. But I don't know that you can pinpoint ALS, what you kind of mentioned there, because who's to say that if an ALS team was working that they weren't needed, if you know what I mean?
Yeah.
Yeah,
So it's really
that,
hard to
yeah,
make that kind of judgment.
I can see that,
But, and then the other side of that, if you're measuring your routes or your usage and that type of thing, and you say, okay, well, we need the basic at 2 o'clock to 3 o'clock. Well, just so happens that at 2:30 we had to release the need for an ALS unit, but it wasn't available.
yeah.
So when you, and that's not to fault anything, that's how the world works. We try to base things on history and data and as best we can, and hopefully have the best outcomes. But obviously, in my mind, my understanding, if you have full-time ALS, you don't have that issue.
Sure,
So
I
there's
can
a
see that.
benefit to their community for that. Now, I'm not, like I say, I'm no expert in any of this, but those things just seem to be practical considerations that we should think about. Is that, is what Mayo's ALS thing superior or isn't it? Is it better for us? And should we try to see if we can look at ALS? Because ALS was one of the reasons we got out of the ambulance business.
Right, yes.
And it's been a goal to evolve that, and North did a great job in working with the city in doing that. And I think that's why we deserve to try to negotiate to see what is the continuation of that plan. And maybe they say, well, we're never going to do permanent ALS. That's not on our radar.
Right.
I mean,
Well, it's a great thing, I think, to have some discussions, and if we're able to, just to build it in, as a goal in the contract, if that's the business model for North Memorial, if that's feasible. So to your point, it might not be right out the gate, but it could be something to move toward.
And that friendly amendment should approach that. I mean,
Yeah.
do we have a history that we could even look at for the ALS? I mean, is all that even working, or?
Yeah.
'Cause I know if I have a heart attack, I really don't want my neighbors helping me. I'd prefer they call up north.
No, but I think part of that, when we talk about this contract and negotiating it, we're gonna change that reporting. That's what I wanna see. To more of a quarterly or 6 months or something versus yearly and that type of thing, because, sometimes something could happen that becomes an issue in the beginning of the year, and you don't get it till, it gets forgotten, and more than just to the mayor, I think it should go to the council. But and we talked about that at the proposal.
We did.
Yeah, so, anyway, any other discussion? Otherwise, all in favor to give the ambulance contract to North, say aye.
do we have a reading of that? I'm not clear what the resolution is. Has it been amended?
It was, yes.
Yes.
It was a friendly amendment, I accepted, and so what do you got on the reading or not?
So we're gonna try this together.
Okay.
We get it all together with everybody. So we had the motion by Rick, second by Maggie, to move forward with North Memorial for the ambulance service to negotiate the contract. The friendly amendment, and I'm trying to take notes from your discussion here, but wanted to take into negotiation account for hours of ALS service and the rent of the building. I mean, is that
Correct.
succinctly addressing that?
Yep.
Okay.
Thank you.
Okay. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Opposed? Motion carries. Thank you.
Thank you all.
Okay, the next item on the agenda is the resolutions. The next item up is the establishment of state aid street, municipal state aid street MSA proposed system revision.
Okay, I'm back.
Hi.
You hear me okay?
Yes.
I'm gonna go to sharing my screen. I'll ask permission for that and,
Did you hear that? Okay.
All right, Chris, you should be good now. Did you get it, Jim, or
Okay.
did I?
He's the presenter.
He got it.
There you go.
There we go.
did I get it?
Yep.
Okay, and you can see the city map here?
Yes.
Okay, well, you may recall back in January when we established the contract for administrative services for managing the state aid system. We said one of the things that we were definitely going to be looking at was this First Street Northeast, which has currently been designated as a state aid route, looking to see if we could move some of that mileage elsewhere. And after doing the certification for mileage, the mapping update, and we had one street that was added in 2021, and that helped bump us just up over the top where the mileage that had not been designated could be applied to streets that were undesignated, as well as moving that mileage from First Street. And what we had talked about with staff was looking at this Third Street Southeast and Alton Avenue, and as it turns out, it was exactly the mileage that we had in reserve to designate it. And just to recap, so the way it works is with the city's network, we can designate 20% of our mileage can be designated as municipal state aid streets, and it's streets of kind of area regional significance. It's all the streets that are highlighted here in pink, and if you look at it, it pretty much forms a network, and most of those are on streets that are higher volume, that are collecting traffic and bringing it to the local streets. The city will gain more revenue on the streets that have higher average daily traffic than those with lower daily traffic. First Street actually had a very relatively low volume. We had it designated there because we had the mileage available. We wanted to put it somewhere because we were still going to get revenue, but the city's advantage put it to an area that is more of a collector street, more of a commercial area, and has higher traffic volume. So this is our recommendation. It's been preliminarily approved by state aid, and at this point, all they're looking for is the resolution and then finalizing our needs report is what we call it. So I guess with that, I'll entertain any questions, or otherwise you can consider that resolution that's before you.
Does anybody have any questions?
Yeah, is that that's the one that goes up, the apartment is gonna go right in the center of that, right? Ken?
No, actually. So the route we're adding would go, through the area where the new townhomes behind Coburn's were built. Just in the south edge of that little area, directly south of Little Duke's gas station area, over to the new roundabout at Third and Alton, and then back to the Highway 19. So it's kind of a shortcut, as it were, for people back in the Eastland neighborhood and Prague Estates to, rather than drive, in front of Holy Trinity, First Bank and Trust, that area.
Is there anything there now?
It's all relatively new road when that roundabout and everything was finished up in the fall of 2020.
So it's going to hit, meet the specs for you, making it a city street?
For a state aid road, yes, that's what Chris is proposing, that we take it away from First Street, up in that area that he's got the X's on there on the map, low volume road, move it down to this one. We actually counted, the majority of the traffic is coming in off Highway 19 into the, access point from Alton to near the gas station in Caribou there. I mean, at least 4 times the amount of traffic we ever had on First Street, so from that standpoint, it's beneficial to add it onto the state aid system.
Okay, any other questions or discussion? Otherwise, I'll offer the motion 22-04-18-01. Is there a second?
Second.
Motion is seconded by Rick. Any other discussion? Hearing none, all in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, motion carries. The next thing is, the land purchase here, from Mark Mitchell.
So yes, as we've talked, actually going back to June 7th of 2021, the council had made a motion to work with Mr. Mitchell to sell a portion of the property to have his east building wall not any longer encroach on the city property after we had obtained that property at that time. What we ended up surveying that will cover all of his east building wall, and then we will also continue to maintain with this chunk of land, which is a 1.10 foot by 56 foot strip of land. And you're talking just over 61 square feet of property, but we would retain an easement to continue to stucco or put art on that wall, as we've talked with the committee for the Central Plaza. So we still maintain that, but he will contain full ownership of that rather than have what he has right now, which is an easement or encroachment agreement to allow his building to be on our property. He will hold full title to that property where his building sits. So he is happy with the proposal. The land sale price is actually $645. The $10.50 per square foot was based off the assessed land value. The survey cost was $670, and he's agreed to cover that as well as estimated legal, which we estimated around $1,500. So all told, his expense that we would invoice would be just over $2,815. So he has signed the purchase and development agreement and the easement agreement here tonight. Should you move forward with this, we would simply have one action taken, which is approve the resolution that would approve the land purchase agreement and the easement.
So when you checked with the steerage committee, they're okay with this? And then when are they gonna put that artwork they had up there?
They're actually not gonna put the artwork on the building wall anymore. I think they're gonna actually have it in the plaza area, but next to the building wall, but we will continue the stucco on that building wall.
Yeah,
So we
that'll
do
be
need
good.
to maintain that easement, and he was okay with it. He knows the edge of his building is currently unfinished cinder block, so it's kind of a win-win
That's
for
what threw
everybody.
me off, is that our piece of artwork that it was supposed to stick out just a little bit.
Yep, they're gonna mount it in the ground, and it's gonna be adjacent to the wall.
Cool. So moved.
Okay, there's been a motion to, approve the resolution 22-4-18-2, by Rick. Is there a second?
I'll second.
And Sean seconded it. Any other discussion?
I think we need to amend the motion because it doesn't just include the resolution, it would also include the purchase agreement and the easement.
So the resolution is what approves the purchase agreement and easement by way of the resolution.
Sale of the land purchase.
Okay.
So we don't?
So we don't.
Okay.
You don't need separate motion. The resolution will
Right.
is approving the land purchase agreement and your easement agreement, which are attachments.
Yeah,
to that.
I wasn't calling for a separate motion, I was just describing it
sorry,
differently. That's okay.
Okay, all in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, motion carries. Okay, the next thing is the donation of basketball hoops.
Yes.
All right, I'll take that one. So we have the New Prague Boys Basketball Association that is proposing to donate 2 basketball hoops to the city to be installed at Heritage Park. Those hoops at that park are vintage 1998, 24 years old. And the value of those hoops being donated is about $4,100. The only thing that the association would ask for in return would be a sticker or plaque that they can put on the basketball hoops that acknowledges the donation. We actually have in our park naming policy that if anybody donates, that is actually one of the things that is allowed by that. We're not renaming the park, just acknowledge the donation with the name of the group that provided the donation. So staff would recommend that the donation of those hoops be approved, and city staff would actually be the ones installing the hoops at the park. But the resolution, which is included on the backside of the memo, would provide for the appropriate acceptance action that council needs to take to accept those hoops as a donation.
Okay,
Is that picture an actual picture of the
that looks good.
vintage?
No,
This is actually the new one,
that's the new ones.
the new ones.
Okay,
They'll be
replace
padded
these
and-
vintage.
Now, the old ones are pretty standard metal backboard, I believe. Matt.
24 years old and it's
Where's,
vintage.
where's Heritage?
My
I'm
kids
just,
are-
I've drawn a blank. Is that the one off of Lexington?
Yes.
Okay. Thanks. Yep, yep.
And according to this, my kids are vintage too, so ha
For a hoop barrel.
So who wants to offer that, Maggie?
I'll make a
Or
motion.
Sean?
Yeah, I'll make a motion that we approve the basketball hoops donated by the New Prague Boys Basketball Association.
That's nice.
Second.
This motion is seconded by Rick. Any other discussion? Hearing none, all in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, motion carries. That's very nice. Okay, the next item up is the award of the 2022 street and parking lot seal coating quote to Allied Blacktop.
Yeah, Mayor, City Council, on April 8th, I opened it up bids for seal coating for the 2022 project. As you can see, we received 3 bids this year: Allied Blacktop, Pearson Brothers, and Farner. Allied Blacktop and Pearson Brothers have been the 2 companies that have done it the last 5 years in New Prague. So Allied Blacktop came in at $1.49 a square yard, Pearson's $1.50 a square yard, and Farner at $2.76 a square yard. So just a little bit of a breakdown. The Public Works budgeted $140,000 this year to seal coat streets. And then in the 2019 CIP account, if you remember last year, we did about 80% of the streets, but we did not do Old Colony Road 37/37 10th Avenue. That was because it was a detour route for Main Street. So we would like to finish that off this year. And in that account, the 2019 account, we still have $147,980.52. So grand total between the 2 accounts, 2019 CIP and then the 2022 CIP, 2022 seal coating, we would like to do a total of $129,752.18. Again, seal coating has gone up quite a bit this year because of the oil prices. Last year, if you remember right, we paid 99 cents a square yard. The year before that, we paid $1.04. 2019, $1.20. So I was hopeful that it wasn't going to jump this much. This was a pretty big jump, you know, a third of the price. But I would hate to not do anything and really fall behind, and we're already slowly falling behind with all of our streets. So this staff's recommendation to give it Allied Blacktop company the $1.49 a square yard, the approval, and for them to start around June 1st.
And you don't think it'd be wise to wait for another year to see the prices go back down on oil?
You can play that game and hopefully the gas or the oil prices go down, but again, I would hate to play that game and fall even farther behind than we already have been. Again, we talked about at budget time, we raised the budget 5,000 from last year from 135 to 140 because we are slowly falling behind. We keep on adding new streets, redoing new streets, but with that said, you have to seal coat those streets every 4 to 6 years. We're pushing that 6-year mark right now, and I would hate to fall back even farther than that. And believe me, that was discussed, Rick, at the very beginning, like, man, do we pay this? But
It's risky.
yeah, I just don't want to take that risk personally.
I'll make the motion. So moved.
Okay, there's a motion by Rick. Is there a second?
Second.
Seconded by Bruce. I have a question. It says here that they're gonna start June first. Are all those dips and everything gonna be fixed on?
Doing like Seventh, 10th Avenue
Yeah.
by Holiday, those.
And, yeah,
Yes.
and all them, are they gonna be fixed by that
Yep.
time?
Yep, the contractor was notified November, I think it was, that we have about 4 areas that have some decent dips that need to get milled, and put in a new layer of asphalt, and that needs to be done before, we were hoping May first, but the weather has
Yeah,
kinda affected that a
obvious-
little
yeah,
bit, but
yeah.
we have been in contact with that company and they are aware of it.
Okay, so they'll raise that manual?
Or they'll blend it into it.
Well.
One of the two
they
will
gotta
happen,
do
yes, both will happen.
Something there. Okay.
I will also add that it's tough to do it too early because the frost is still coming out of the
No, I
ground.
know that,
So
yeah.
that's why, there's still frost in the ground, so.
Yeah, that's why I asked that, yeah.
Yeah, so that May first, that was a great idea compared to last year's weather, but now we're having this year's weather, so we're probably looking at mid-May.
Yep,
And again, that was GMH that did that work and they are aware of it.
okay. Any other questions? All in favor, say aye.
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 Opposed, motion carries. Okay, the next thing on the agenda is the surplus city property.
I'll take that one again. As of last council meeting, I had a few items on the surplus, but this item came a little bit later on after that meeting. So the city owns about 100 of these chairs that you see in front of you, and we've never used more than 60 of these chairs at one time. As you can see in the picture, there's 37 chairs in our break room. They've sat there since 2014 for the most part. Never been used. We have had an organization reach out to us and asked if they could purchase those chairs. Josh actually talked to Scott Riggs, city attorney, and was curious on how that all worked. Could we sell directly to somebody and negotiate a price? Scott Riggs said we could. So we were approached at $20 per chair. So a total sale of $740 for 37 chairs. Again, this would just free up some space in our break room. Also chairs that haven't been used in 8 years. I
Matt,
could not
did you-
tell you why we bought 100 of them in 2014. I don't know that, but obviously there was a reason. I don't know that for sure.
Did, and I'm all for selling the extra chairs. My concern is that it wasn't offered to other people. I know that a group did come forward, but my personal feeling is that I'm sure I'm gonna hear from somebody that said, well, I would have bought those chairs, or I would have paid X amount for them, or.
Yep.
So I'm just a little concerned about that. I'd like to know what your guys' thoughts are too.
Same with you. I mean, can we post it?
We definitely can. I'd say
post
we were
it
reached out
first.
and I thought, I will tell you, when I heard that they were willing to give us $20 a chair, I thought, that's more than I expected.
Yeah,
But.
I'm not saying it's a bad offer.
No,
I'm
I know,
just
I
saying-
totally agree with you, Sean. Could
Yeah.
we get more? I don't know that, but.
I don't either, but it's just the fact that we made it available to
Right.
everybody.
To
as
make it
opposed
fair,
to-
I mean, if.
I'm appreciative that somebody came in and said,
Mm-hmm.
but I'm kinda curious, people are gonna be curious, how did they know there was extra chairs there that, that weren't being used?
Yeah, I think it's probably just word of mouth from people.
And
City
that could
staff
be.
probably saying, hey, we have those chairs, exactly the same thing, would you be interested? I'm not sure how that all took place.
Right, so, I'm not opposed to getting rid of them, and I think you're probably right, $20 is a fair price for them, but.
Would you like to post it for 10 days? You have 10 days to, get a hold of us, or we're selling them to.
We would put them on an auction site if that's what you guys are recommending.
Just to make it fair.
So right now, this is just to add it to our surplus. It still hasn't been decided how we're gonna sell them.
Well, the recommendation is
Or
to add it
was
to
it?
our surplus and authorize the
Oh,
staff to sell
sorry.
these items. But you can also authorize that we sell these items, as a surplus and put it on an auction site for sure.
Are those other pieces from that last meeting still on that site, or did those go?
They have not been posted yet.
Oh, they haven't?
No.
Okay, so we could do this all in one.
Yeah, my plans are to probably post them this week still,
Okay.
like all those items.
Then the other thing, I see some chairs here that have some stains.
So we have, double this amount of chairs still in the, closet back here. So
Okay.
yeah, those can be moved around.
Okay,
So if we added all these chairs out here, this room would be packed and we would, adding all these chairs, you're never gonna have 100 in here, you're gonna have standing room behind it. So,
okay. I didn't realize.
but
we
yeah,
had
I
some
know what
in
you're
there.
saying, some of them can stain and moved out, I totally
Yeah.
agree, yep.
Yep.
Yeah, a lot of the chairs were purchased before we had the ramp and before we had this much of a staff table and all of our equipment, so it just Never had that in the first place, but really don't ever know.
So if it's your recommendation to, whatever you guys decide, I'm fine with.
It's not a deal breaker for me, I just wanted to get the other council's opinion on it, but
I think it would be good to deflect the criticism that you might get from not offering it publicly. And then you do have that issue that you just brought up. They may have been found out from a city staff and then that staff member gets criticized and it's just be nice to at least for a short time put it to the public.
Yep.
In some way.
You can use a short time limit. I mean, 10 days is probably efficient.
But if we put it on an auction site, it's whatever the conditions are there. So just, I think if we just have a motion to authorize these as surplus right now and
Yeah, no.
sell them however,
Yep.
you guys.
I'll sell them with on the auction site that I have, and I'll obviously put a limit or a it has to hit a minimum bid. If it doesn't hit that minimum bid, hopefully this person hasn't bought other chairs, and we'll go from there.
Make it legal. I'll make the motion if you want. We
Okay,
just need a second.
there's a motion by Rick. Is there a second?
I'll second.
Is that okay?
yeah, I was gonna second it. Thank you, that's what I was ready to do.
Any other discussion? Hearing none, all in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, motion carries. Okay. Credit card policy. You wanna take that, Robin?
Sure. So recently, just looking through some policies and procedures, I wasn't able to identify that we had record of council approval for our credit card use and fuel credit cards as well. So we did find some older documentation that credit card holders received, just stating some kind of simple procedures and guidelines. But we reached out to Scott Riggs' office for some guidance to make sure that we had a comprehensive and detailed guideline and policy that credit card holders could sign off on, just stating their responsibility for the card and that it's ultimately under the city's finances and all that it entails, so.
So there's two memos that we got. The one in the packet excluded, Bruce Reamer's.
Unintentionally, yes.
I didn't hear that. I heard it was intentional, but the new memo that was passed out has the utilities director in it.
Correct, and we updated the header as well to be consistent with most current documentation, so. So the goal would be that the policy would be provided to each card holder and that the final page would be signed off on by the card holder as they receive their, prior to receiving their card.
Okay.
Robin, on page 2, B2, is there meant to be a number put in that blank area?
No, so the goal there is with different departments and different directors having varying levels of purchasing needs. City Administrator Tetzloff and I proposed having a blank space there so that we could indicate based on user what their limit would be, so that everybody wouldn't have the need for $2,500 cumulative monthly. Maybe some folks only need 500 or 1,000. So based on need, we would indicate that amount upon award of a credit card.
So as far as the resolution and the policy of the city, should that sentence be taken out then if it's not gonna be used at all? Or, because I think, does the previous sentence say that, it's determined, requires prior city administrator approval? I think that's what that means, is that you decide what the amount is per department.
Right, and we would just indicate it on the document when it's going for signature by the card holder.
Yeah, because
So
this is a whole document then that it's the policy and then they gotta sign it, so.
Right, but they're not signing the
Sounds like,
policy.
Robin, it would just be specific dollar amount, more information for the person that's
Yes.
the card holder, so they know what they cannot go over.
So when they sign this on the back,
Right, no, I totally understand that, but I'm just,
From
this,
employee to employee.
No, I get that too.
Okay.
But that's just the exhibit that the,
You're saying you don't maybe necessarily see the need.
Yeah, correct.
if our policy is we're gonna let the city administrator decide that, then that's what we should stay instead of that sentence that doesn't seem to mean anything, then if we're not gonna use it. If it's blank,
I got you.
Sure.
if it's blank and we're not gonna use it.
You're trying to just establish that there's a signed document with that amount on there.
Right, we would establish the amount and
Thanks, Bruce.
have this 3-page document indicate basically in writing when we're awarding a credit card, we would indicate the maximum amount there, and then the card holder would sign off.
Okay. So the credit card user agreement is going to include the policy?
Yep.
Correct.
Okay. You could just put the limit on the credit card agreement and just have them sign the one document, but if
Sure.
you want to do it together, I guess that's fine.
I can see that, if that's a,
You envision something, Bruce, maybe on the last page of just their specific.
Yeah.
established amount.
Otherwise, the credit card user agreement should refer back to that thing, so the person knows that that is part of my agreement I'm making with the city. Is what I would take it, but
So if we remove the sentence from B2 in the policy, that final sentence, and maybe just copy and paste it to the credit card user agreement as one of the bullet points.
Yep.
yeah, and
That
it's gonna
work?
be different for every person that signs the document.
Right.
Then my other question, and I'm not sure, I didn't look at the new one close enough, but, yeah, I guess it's there. I'm not sure, I guess I didn't think through the golf course, because we do not have a, employee of the city that operates the golf course, if that should be handled differently when we have a contract employee. And so, I'm not sure if that means anything in our policy, if we should treat that differently, because we're giving authority for a contract employee to have a credit card. And we don't have any ability to, we don't have the same control over that as we would an employee. We have different ways of suing, I suppose, if there's fraud.
Sure.
So I'm just saying it, I don't have a suggestion, but
Did Scott Riggs pick up on that at all? That the fact that the golf manager is not a city employee?
They didn't. We didn't speak specifically to it. Our goal there was to try to eliminate some of the expenditure reimbursements and the separate accounts, like at Coburn's, to have to establish those accounts and be paid otherwise.
Yeah.
To have that credit card with obviously set amounts so that those folks could do business that way and just
Right.
eliminate all of the expenditure transactions.
Who signs off on his, Robin? Is it you? Because I think Kurt used to kind of report to Patty.
Right.
Yeah,
Yep, he sends them to the finance office and then I review them for
okay, so
processing.
you would still have to sign off on,
Absolutely, yep.
okay,
well, the credit card would already be made though.
yeah.
You know what I mean? The purchase is already done.
Yeah, just take his name off there.
But it could be reviewed though, I'm guessing.
Yeah.
So it wouldn't be I kind of envisioned where you were going with it, that this could be something that it seems like every time you read about some city malfeasance in the paper or whatever with credit card or whatever, it's like a 2 or 3 year long process and it,
And I don't wanna make a bigger issue out of it than it does need to be, but maybe Robin can just call our attorney and say, should there be any consideration for this issue?
Sure,
Because the
Find
food
out.
and beverage coordinator, that is a city employee.
yes.
Yeah.
And the reason I included that individual in that position is because of kind of the legwork
Colburns
that,
and,
yeah. They're doing a lot of the purchasing, but I didn't want to take away authority from the general manager needing to make purchases.
Because we don't want Dale Ornthal having.
no,
Then
it
the
doesn't
next
indicate.
question, who gets all the frequent flyer points?
So, actually, it isn't a credit card, it's a
Purchasing card.
purchasing card, so it's a B-card.
B-card.
Yep,
But I wonder when we think of
for the free.
initiating
Disneyland.
expenditures, the general manager, even though they're a contracted employee, they're still authorized to initiate expenditures, whether we'd be getting invoiced after the fact or not. So, I mean, I think we can still run it by the attorney's office.
Yeah, I do have concerns about that also, but that's kind of a separate thing, but, just more for accounting and kind of things, it's kind of awkward to me. But the credit card does offer additional levels of fraudability, and that's why I bring it up. You know,
Sure.
it's just different. You know, he's not right now it's a guy, so he doesn't have the same kind of issues that if he left it on the kitchen table and someone took it and did all kind of things, it's different.
I agree with you,
An
I'd stick it in my
employee,
crawl
but,
too.
but-
You know, like you mentioned,
I'm just suggesting talk to the attorney just to see if there's anything else we need to worry about to protect ourselves.
And if there's anything
I
in
totally
the
support that.
in the agreement, the management agreement with the city, if there's anything that
Yeah,
addresses.
does that dovetail into this? Does the management, the contract, a good point, does that dovetail into this?
Something to just take a look.
Part of that, that would indicate he has to follow city policies with the use of that card. But
Yeah.
the contract, yeah, who knows if it's in the contract.
So a P card though is essentially you're loading that card, right? Whether it's on the first of the month or don't you have to put money into
No.
that or authorize?
There's cards that operate like that.
That isn't this one.
That's not how this functions.
Oh, okay. Cause I was just thinking if, you know, Kurt was gonna buy 50 polo shirts to hang in the cases of golf balls to sell, couldn't he find out what that invoice is and let you know, and then you could authorize that amount, and then he could just put it on his card or whatever, and then track it and follow it, but,
Yeah, and at that point, if electronic payment was needed, we could operate it that way. Otherwise, they'd probably just do an invoice in that example like they have been. So this is more for that, like the mayor is speaking to, you know, needing items quickly for events and needing to go to a brick and mortar and
oh, I see.
pick something up. So,
Without having to say, then they can go any place versus
yeah.
a store that doesn't have an account and then they gotta pay it out of cash and, yeah.
And with the,
We don't have any signed things for the card holders?
No.
there are some previously, just not council-approved documentation. So,
Just update them and.
yeah, I think it was from 2010 was the documents we were able to find.
I think it's from when we first had the cards to begin with was when those were done, but yeah, nothing formally from the council level at that point.
Robin, how often are those, accounts rectified, or, I mean, is it?
Monthly.
It is monthly, okay, so there's nothing sitting out there for,
Nope, so their cardholders are required to turn in receipts monthly,
okay.
reconciled to the card to each transaction. Another addition would be fire is listed for the fuel card, but not for the credit card portion. So if we're making updates, I need to also add fire for credit card. So,
What do you need?
Yeah.
Just,
We have one, I don't personally need it, but.
I'm teasing.
Purchasing uses it.
Yeah, yeah.
Are you the only officer that would have that credit card?
Yeah, it's under lock and key, but Kim has the information, so before she makes a purchase, she calls me. Vice versa, when Mike set it up, if I was gonna make a purchase, I need to call Kim to verify the purchase before I buy it,
Okay.
but.
Okay, so are we gonna do this next time then with the corrections? And
sure, we can follow up with,
just bring it back? Okay,
okay,
please, thank you.
thanks.
It's a good step. It's surprising that we don't have that, I guess. All right, establish special city council meetings, special city council meeting dates for board and commission interviews.
That time again, huh?
Yep.
I'm okay with just about any day other than May 10th, which is the park board meeting. And I
Actually,
don't
move
know,
that back to the 17th, maybe.
pardon?
We move that back.
Oh, the 17th? Oh, and I'm not going to be here. I'm gone the week of the 16th.
Yep.
Do we want to maybe shoot for something on Monday, the 2nd, before our council meeting?
I'm not gonna,
That's a bad day for me.
that's a
Okay.
bad, I'm not gonna be here. I'm gonna be coming back from Michigan. What about, and you're gonna be gone the week of the 16th?
16th, yes.
Can we do it on the 9th?
I won't be.
Okay.
But you don't, I don't know that
No.
we need,
We
you
don't,
need to worry about
all,
everyone being here,
everybody, yeah.
but
What,
Close as possible.
what positions are open, Ken,
Yeah,
do you know?
do you know?
Barb, I don't know if you can hear, if you could chime in, you probably have a good handle on what's available at this point.
Hello.
Hello.
The only one that doesn't have any applicants is for the park board youth position. Otherwise, there's applicants for all the other seats.
And that we could work on. I mean, it might not be,
Are they multiple applicants for one particular seat on any particular board, Barb, or is it, we have 2 openings and we only have 2 people that have applied?
Utilities, there's 1 opening and we have 2 people.
Okay,
Otherwise, all the other ones, we pretty much have
Just
the
sing-
same number of applicants to open seats.
so
That's
I
2.
don't even know why we need to interview them if they're the only applicant for the only seat. Maybe just give it to them and.
Yeah.
So really then it narrows it down to the utility board, but
have we ever disqualified an applicant?
not that I've ever seen.
no.
No matter what.
It's up to the board if it doesn't work out, but I mean, how do you turn somebody down if there's an open seat and they're the only one that applies for it? I would guess you'd have to have some type of
Real.
big, real reason.
And actually on the golf board as well, there are 3 seats available and we have 4 applicants.
Okay,
2 that are, would be renewing and then 2 new applicants.
So what is
And
that
both
for?
applicants for utilities are new.
okay. Well, I'm open on the 9th, but Bruce, you said that didn't work, you were gone?
Yeah, and I think some of these, I don't feel we need all to be there, or we could operate as a committee that makes a recommendation to the council too, for that.
Yeah, that's a good point.
Or have staff in the city council, I mean, food for
What?
thought for the future. but-
Yeah.
I'm just gonna throw something out there. What if the applicants attend the next board meeting and we let the board pick, let's say the park board, let the park board decide, and then we just authorize it. Let the park board interview the 2 candidates, let the golf board interview the 3 candidates, and let the utility board interview the 2 candidates at a next meeting, real briefly, so we don't have to add another one to ours. And then if whoever the board picks, that name comes forward to the council and we just rubber stamp it.
Yeah.
But it's really those people that have to work with this individual, it's not us so
Yeah,
much.
I guess my reaction, and I don't wanna keep being negative Nancy to everything, but, some of the commissions have more discretion than others. And to allow the board itself to make the decision, then you might, a little more inbreeding that might be possible that way.
But even then, it all filters down to I mean, I know that like the utility commission is a much, probably more powerful board, but it doesn't supersede the council though.
Right. And EDA has more discretion than
Right.
other ones, and,
I was just trying to think of streamlining it, we can do.
yeah, I agree with it, streamlining it, because it does seem to be an issue to try to make these interviews work.
Yeah, and then especially when you have the ones coming back, and if we're kind of, if you're gonna reappoint, it's like, You know, you ask the same questions you did,
Yeah.
what, 3 or 4 years before, and
You know, I brought this up before, the, last council I was on had a board that was just set up just for personnel. And that, there was an attorney on it, and there was, we got a lot of good people on it. That way we didn't cross no lines, so I don't know if you wanna start thinking about that, because we spend a lot of time, on personnel. So I don't know.
I just want to interject real quickly. I'd have to check with the charter, any of our board and commission,
Yeah.
bylaws and see exactly how
get that set up.
is set up. Ultimately, it is the council's recommendation, but want to make sure we're not doing anything contrary to
Yep.
what we have established. And I'm not I don't have that memorized or in front of me, so I can't address that right now.
Well, I don't mind missing it if the second works for everybody else, just because it didn't work for.
No, I'm not here either.
Oh.
Rick, you're gonna have to do the meeting.
And I don't have no problem with doing the 9th, even though I'm not here, so.
Okay.
I don't have any problem.
Should we say the 9th then, or?
Yeah, I called it first, getting off this thing, so.
Can we just do it next year?
Well, when's the first council meeting in June would be?
The second.
So the issue we have coming up is that the positions actually end on May 31st.
On the ones
So it would be nice, I know a lot of the boards don't meet till later in June, obviously, where you could appoint at a meeting in June, but, you know, obviously the early ones out the chute would be park board, and then I guess most of them would be much later, and EDA.
Can't we just go back to the 9th and, see who's available and what's, you're not gonna be here?
No, Bruce isn't.
Is Bruce?
Yeah, so.
I'm fine with the 9th. We can do that.
Yep, I'm okay
What
with
time?
it. 5:30?
5:30.
Does that work for you?
Mhm.
Okay. All right. May 9th at 5:30.
One more question. I had, the next planning. What's gonna be up then in the, next planning?
Well, the next planning will be prioritizing, so that, you mean the visioning?
No, I mean the next planning commission.
Oh,
April 27th. I got it highlighted here. I'm just wondering, what was that for?
I haven't seen, we don't get the packet until, what?
I just
week.
got April,
Is the
27th.
planning commission meeting, yeah. But
Yeah.
we won't get that packet till a few days before, probably,
Right.
yeah. So I don't have no idea what's on
End
it.
of the week, Friday, that'll come out.
Mayor Jarrett, weren't we discussing something when we first sat down?
well,
And you said the next planning commission?
no, I won't, there might be something, coming up on the agenda that's affecting where we live, and I was just telling them I'm not gonna be around.
Oh, okay.
And no, it's nothing that.
Sounds mysterious.
Yeah. I'm all,
I'm gonna get.
I don't know, can we talk about it or
And we'll,
not?
no, I haven't even written the report, so we'll come to council in due time. Maybe leave it at that.
Oh, geez, do I have to skip my
Yeah.
trip then for this?
No, it's an application, I can tell you, it's an application from the Community Baptist Church to add some, soccer fields in their
That sort of
open
was.
space.
Yep, thank you.
And there may or may not be
Yes.
neighborhood opposition.
Well, I'll be talking to you because I'd like to see, who decided that was gonna be for, soccer?
Nobody yet.
It's just who the applicant, of the
applicant.
church
Oh,
is
is
the
that what
applicant,
it
and they're
is?
making the application.
Well, we need some controversial thing.
Mm-hmm. We don't get rid of one and we get another.
Yeah.
Well, this one might be, particularly because the mayor is a neighbor to it.
No, so
oh,
is,
boy,
so
yeah.
is Councilmember
No,
Bass.
I
Yes,
live far enough away.
Yeah.
two council members got notified on it.
Yeah. That was the other thing.
I don't know why our neighborhood was here.
It's what, you,
350 feet.
350 feet, I think.
Okay.
Okay, so with that miscellaneous, there's EDA in there. I'll go around the table. Maggie, do
I
you
don't
have
have
anything?
anything, no.
Sean?
Nope.
I don't. Bruce?
Nothing.
Nothing of value.
Chief? Chief? Robin? Bruce?
Just FYI, delayed, we were gonna be flushing all the
Yep.
system hydrants this
I
this
saw
week,
that.
and we pushed it off due to the weather, and we didn't wanna create icy streets or whatever, so we're pushing water out, so, next week.
Yeah, you hope.
We got the ribbon cutting for that Veterans Memorial coming up too, don't we?
On the 14th,
14th?
the dedication, yep.
Nothing more.
Ken, okay, I take a motion to adjourn.
So move.
Second? All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Aye, motion carries.
Ken, you were very close with your time estimate.
What time is that memorial thing on
I was
Saturday?
watching.
That's gonna be May 14th at 1 PM.
Okay.
And they wanna close down Main Street. I think they're expecting a pretty good crowd.